Okay, so good afternoon. I'll be continuing the case that Jason has created for our negative side, as well as address some of the concerns that the affirmative side has brought up, and then finish up with addressing the course of action that the affirmative has outlined that they would like to take. So first of all, I'd like to continue to bring up and more specific examples of the fact that the Patriot Act has deterred international and domestic terrorism. In a report by Steve Bucci, James Carafano, and Jessica Zuckerman, who are reporters of the Heritage Foundation, they have analyzed the fact that terrorists must increase their baseline skills and capabilities needed for a successful attack within the United States. Now, basically, they're saying that as a result of the Patriot Act, terrorists must become more skilled in order to execute the same amount of damage that they were able to prior to the Patriot Act. As a result of this, it makes them actually easier to catch because due to the war on terror and the disruption of terrorist networks around the globe, terrorists are not able to gain the training they need in order to carry out terrorist attacks on the scale that they were able to before the Patriot Act. Some examples of this are in December 2001, a man by the name of Richard Reed was intercepted in flight from Paris to Miami with a bomb within his shoe. He was convicted in 2003 to life in prison. Another example is a man by the name of Diran Barab, who in August of 2004 was found due to a police raid warranted by the Patriot Act to have been planning to bomb the New York Stock Exchange and other important financial institutions around the world. Finally, a man by the name of Amin al-Khalifi was found in February of 2012 that he was suspected of attacking the U.S. Capitol, and his arrest was made possible due to undercover operations spurred by digital surveillance of his telephone. In addition, I'd like to also reinforce the fact that government searches are perfectly constitutional and legal. This is because that, according to James Slate, who's an editor for the Medium Corporation, any request for items under Section 215, which is a section of the Patriot Act that allows the FBI to search individuals' records, it requires judicial approval, and an FBI agent cannot simply walk into a school or a library and demand records on that person. In addition, going to the concern of roving wiretaps that the affirmative side brought up, roving wiretap is basically a wiretap that allows an agent to track a person rather than a specific phone. This is merely just updating surveillance methods to keep up with modern technology, where disposable phones are significantly easier to come across than in earlier times. So basically, if an agent were to open up a wiretap on a suspected terrorist and they were to be tipped off about that, they could simply dispose their phone and get a new one, and the warrant would no longer be active. Next, moving on to the fact that the Patriot Act can be used to spy on American citizens. In response to that, I'd say that in order to investigate an American citizen, the agency must demonstrate more evidence of terroristic activities to begin an investigation in the first place. In addition, during the investigation, different conditions onto the American apply. For example, in beginning an investigation, James Slate, who is the editor who I quoted earlier, noted that the government can only obtain your email headers, but not the content, as long as that also receives judicial approval. Finally, during an investigation, Nathan Sales at George Mason University points out that the lone wolf tracking does not apply to Americans and instead is only allowed to investigate international terrorists and not domestic. And then finally, I'll wrap up by kind of talking about some problems with the affirmative's proposal. First of all, the affirmative side has not outlined a path to achieving the action that they would like to achieve, instead only just showing how the Patriot Act apparently violates our security and our privacy. However, I'd argue that if the Patriot Act were to be repealed or reduced significantly in its power, there's a possibility that the FBI and other intelligence agencies would have to revert to pre-9/11 tactics. Robert Mueller, in a 2004 Senate testimony, says that this is equivalent to fighting the war on terror with one hand tied behind our backs. In addition, the Department of Justice in 2005 was quoted as saying that the government's prevention efforts should not be restricted by boxes on an organizational chart. They also point out that in the case of the roving wiretaps and the permissions of those, that prior to 9/11, officers had to maintain multiple warrants in multiple jurisdictions, which created unnecessary delays. In matters concerning terrorist activities, I think that time is of the essence. We can't be worried about if agents have talked to the right people, if that means that they cannot do their jobs. Finally, in addressing the affirmative's concerns over the sneak and peek clause, this clause was actually amended in 2005 to meet civil liberties concerns, and actually the FBI agents or whoever is investigating must provide notice within 30 days that they will be investigating for a period no longer than 90 days. Finally, in the fact that if the Patriot Act must be amended in a certain way, it is Coley Simpson of the Heritage Foundation also notes that the same level of surveillance can be achieved by requiring that a third-party entity house the telephone data, and that only certain entities within that third party would be able to access it, thus alleviating more civil liberties concerns and personal safety.